Elias Turner had always been known as the quietest man in the entire desert valley, a poor farmer whose life had been shaped more by drought than destiny. His land lay on the edge of the canyon, dry, cracked, and stubborn as an old mule. Most days he worked alone under a merciless sun, coaxing life out of soil that refused to listen. He lived in a small wooden cabin built by his late father, and though Elias never spoke of loneliness, it clung to him like dust on his boots. No one ever visited, and no one ever asked about him. That changed the day Noya arrived. Noya was an Apache woman whose presence seemed to shift the very air around. Her, strong, composed, and carrying a fierce sadness in her eyes, she walked into Elias's land like she already belonged there. He set down his tools, unsure what to say or why this beautiful woman with braided hair and traditional dress had wandered onto his worn-out farm. Before he could speak, she said the words that turned his world upside down. "I choose you to be the father." Elias froze, thinking he had misheard. Her voice did not shake. She spoke like someone who had already survived storms he couldn't imagine. She explained that her tribe had suffered a devastating attack weeks earlier, raiders who struck during the night. Many men had died, many women too. The tribe's elders, fearing a future without children, had told surviving women to choose men, kind men, outside their tribe, to rebuild what had been broken. It was not a command rooted in weakness, but in honor. Noya rejected warriors, outlaws, and rich ranchers who whispered sweet promises they never intended to keep. She wanted someone honest, gentle, someone who knew struggle and patience. She had asked townsfolk in the nearest settlement, listened quietly to their gossip, and every story led her to one name, Elias Turner, the poor farmer with a good heart. Elias stood speechless, not understanding why a woman as strong and graceful as Noya would ever choose him. He tried to protest, saying he had nothing to offer but a failing farm, an empty home, and a pocket with more dust than dollars. But Noya stepped closer, her eyes steady. "A child does not need a rich father. A child needs a good one." Her words sank deep into Elias's chest. No one had ever spoken of him with such certainty. She touched his calloused hands and told him that life grows, where there is warmth even in barren places. But Elias, overwhelmed, felt unworthy. The memory of his past failures, his inability to save his family farm, his loneliness, the shame of being known as the boy whose crops always died, all rose to the surface. He stepped back, telling her she deserved someone stronger, someone noble. Noya didn't move. She simply met his gaze and told him a story of her own. As a child, she had seen her mother tend flowers in the desert after a long drought. Her mother whispered that the desert only blooms for those who believe it can. "I believe in you, Elias Turner," she said softly, "and I choose you." Something inside him cracked open. It was not romance he felt, not yet, but recognition. She understood his quiet suffering. She saw who he could be, not who he had been. Still unsure, Elias asked why she trusted him. She answered, "Because when I look at you, I see a man who would protect what is his, and a child of mine deserves a father who will never run." Her honesty made his throat tighten. No one had ever believed in him this fiercely. But before Elias could respond, a distant rumble echoed through the canyon. Dust rose. Riders approached, the same bandits who had destroyed Noya's village. She stiffened, fear flashing in her eyes. Elias grabbed her hand, pulling her behind the barn, whispering that she must stay low. For the first time in his life, he wasn't running from danger. He was standing because someone had chosen him. The bandits circled, scanning the land. But Elias's knowledge of the terrain helped him keep her hidden. His heart pounded, not for his own safety, but for hers. When the danger passed, Noya realized she had been right. He was a protector. The sun set in burning streaks across the sky, and in the orange glow, Noya said softly, "Today you protected me. Tomorrow you may protect our future." Elias looked at her, all doubts colliding with the new fire lit inside him. A choice stood before him, fear or purpose. And in the fading day, Elias whispered the first brave words of his life. "If you choose me, then I won't fail you." She smiled, calm, knowing, almost relieved. For the first time since the tragedy, she felt hope. And for the first time in his lonely life, Elias felt chosen. Elias woke the next morning with a sense of responsibility, so heavy yet so strangely empowering that he felt he had stepped into a new skin overnight. Noya had slept on a blanket near the fireplace, and as dawn filtered through the cabin window, He watched her breathe softly, realizing how much trust she had placed in him. A stranger, a poor farmer, a man who had never believed himself worthy of anyone's respect. But he remembered her words. A child needs a good father. He decided he would become that man, not out of pride but out of duty, something he had never been needed for until now. When she awoke, she joined him outside as he tended his 2 surviving crops, corn and beans. Instead of mocking the small yield like most people in town did, Noya knelt beside him and began to work without saying a word. There was no judgment in her eyes, only quiet determination. Elias watched her hands, skilled and steady, as if she had been born knowing how to help things grow. The silence between them was not awkward, it was natural, like 2 rivers merging. Hours passed, and she told him more about her tribe, her family, the traditions she wished to preserve for her future child. Elias listened with a reverence he did not even grant the Bible on his shelf. She spoke of strength, unity, the sacred bond between parents, and the responsibility of raising a child not just for oneself but for the tribe, the land, the ancestors. Elias absorbed every word. He found himself wanting to protect not just her, but the legacy she carried. But peace did not last long. Near midday, a gunshot cracked across the valley. Elias instinctively pulled, Noya behind him as a bandit. One of the raiders rode toward the cabin. The man jumped off his horse, demanding Noya be returned, claiming she belonged to his gang now. Elias felt a fire rise in him, a fire he didn't know he possessed. He stood tall, shoulders squared, telling the bandit, "She belongs to no one." The bandit laughed and reached for his gun. Elias wasn't quick with a weapon, but Noya was. In one swift motion, she threw Elias to the ground and unleashed a warning shot that grazed the man's hat clean off. The bandit fled, shouting that he'd return with his brothers. Elias stared at her, breathless. She had just risked everything for him. "I won't let them take you," he said, his voice trembling with determination. "Then you must stand with me," Noya replied. "A father must be brave." Her words marked him like a brand. For the next hours they prepared, barricading the windows, sharpening tools, planning escape routes. But something unexpected happened during these preparations. They talked, really talked. She asked about his childhood, and he told her how he had grown up watching. His father failed to harvest enough to feed them. He told her how after his father's death the townsfolk avoided him, calling him cursed. He admitted how he had stopped believing in himself long before she arrived. Noya placed her hand over his chest and said, "A man is not defined by what the world thinks of him, only by what he chooses to become." Her touch, her eyes, her trust. Elias felt something blooming inside him, stronger than courage. He felt connection. As afternoon faded into evening, the bandits returned, 5 riders this time. Dust spiraled as their horses thundered forward. Elias grabbed Noya's hand. "No running," he said. "We stand." What happened next felt like the turning of fate. Elias, once the timid farmer, fought with a purpose greater than fear. He knew every ditch and slope of his land, leading the bandits into traps he had dug long ago for coyotes. Noya fought beside him, brave and unyielding. Together they drove the bandits off the land for good. When the last rider disappeared into the horizon, Elias collapsed to his knees, shaking. Noya knelt beside him, cupping his face gently. "Now you understand," she whispered. "I did not choose a poor farmer. I chose a good man." Tears stung his eyes. For the first time in his life, he felt like one. As night wrapped around them, Elias made a promise, soft but certain.
"If you want me to be the father,
then I will give our child a life better than mine ever was. I will protect you. I will protect our family." Noya smiled, a soft, hopeful smile he would never forget. "Then our child will be proud," she answered. The moon rose high, casting silver across the canyon, and in that pale glow 2 lonely souls found belonging, not through chance but through choice.